Welcome to the October meeting. Got a good crowd here. Got the police chief and seems like the whole police force tonight. Thank you for showing up. And then we should have a lively school bond discussion where we learn more about the pros and cons of that, and then a lot of our regular business as well. I don't want to waste time, so I'm going to hand the floor over to Halima and Officer Navarro and anyone else who's going to speak sort of at the outset about recent police activity. Yep.
Okay. Hello, everybody. So I want to make sure that you all have enough time to speak with Chief and for him to be able to get to you guys. So I'm just going to go over a couple things quickly, and then we can get to the nitty gritty. Yeah, sorry. Okay, so I'll try to protect my voice. All right. So we had a couple of assaults, and so I want to go over some of the main ones that I noticed and some of the things to be aware of. So one of them was an individual sitting outside of the tavern on Main Street. He was on the phone. He was unaware that a vehicle had pulled up right behind him. An individual jumped out of the vehicle and tried to take his chain. He pulled it from the back of his neck. The chain broke, and so upon that happening, the suspect ran off into the car. That's still an open investigation. They do have some information from near surveillance footage, and that's still ongoing. Luckily, the individual wasn't harmed. There was some redness to his neck from the chain being pulled, but overall, he was okay. The other one, it was an individual who was leaning up against, somebody was leaning up against his garage gate. The individual was getting home and enter the subterranean garage. As he opened the subterranean garage, the person that was leaning on it kind of stumbled backward. That upset the suspect, who then followed the individual into the garage and brandished a knife, and a physical altercation ensued. The victim was able to run out of the garage, and he was with a passenger in his vehicle who called 911. The suspect was arrested and identified as being somebody outside of the city who had some issues outside of the city at that point as well. So that person is still in custody. And I believe that the charges were already filed against him. And so the other ones that I wanted to mention, as you may have seen some of these issues, and if you have, we want to make sure that we're getting some of that information. We've had a group of juveniles who have been on electric bikes causing some issues throughout the city. So we had a couple of incidents that involved them. Sometimes they range from maybe 3 to 5 individuals, but they range from attempted robberies to some assaults. And it started kind of smaller end, but now it seems that they've escalated a bit. Officer Hollowell has been working on this for a couple months now, so he may have some more information than I do on that, but it is something that the department is aware of and has been working pretty tirelessly on with different units involved in this process as well. So if you do have any information that might be pertinent on this, you can contact Officer Hollowell, or you can share it with me and I'll make sure that it gets to him. So that all of that is definitely something we've been looking into. And then the other part I wanted to get into are a couple of the pickpockets. Again, we have them at the Victorian in the last month. So I'm looking at the last OPA meeting to today. We had 11 incidents. The majority were at the Victorian again. So we did have those going on there. And it's the kind of the same MO as before, as we've seen, where they have their phone in their back pocket, as I have mine right now. But you guys are cool, so I think. So just something to be very wary about. And this isn't really, it's not just something to be wary at a bar. This is anywhere. If you guys are at the grocery store, just putting your stuff down, leaving your purse in the cart, just anything. Sometimes we have a false sense of security wherever you are. I think it's just always important to remember to keep an eye on your belongings, keep your valuables near you, and make sure that you just don't get too comfortable with that. Even as I have my phone in my pocket, I'm like, okay, where am I now? You know, where am I standing? If I'm going outside, it's going to be in my hand. So just kind of be cognizant of that. Sometimes it's very easy to be unaware, especially when you're kind of busy going on about your day. So just something to make sure you're aware of. Lastly, we had a couple of burglaries. So of these burglaries, 2 of them were garage break-ins where valuables were stolen. So as a reminder, another place where we do tend to have a false sense of security is these garages, right? We tend to keep a lot of valuables there. Bikes, that's the big one. They're always looking for bikes because they're easy. They can get them quickly, sell them for parts. So make sure that if you have a different space to keep your bikes, or if you have them in a subterranean garage, we always recommend having an enclosed space within the garage, not just outside where it's visible. So just something to consider there. And then the other incidents that were burglary related, there was a home that's for sale. And this was a real estate agent walking into the home, and he found somebody inside the home as he was entering it. So often when we have homes that are under construction, or if they're being tented and those type of cases, this is where they might be the most vulnerable. So it is a good time to just be cognizant of that, speak with your neighbors. This is where neighborhood watch really comes in handy, letting your neighbors know, hey, we're not going to be around. Can you just keep an eye on the home? Any suspicious activity, please report it. Make sure that you're aware of that, that your neighbors are aware of that as well. And if you have the ability to have cameras up, just so that you have any sort of motion detection or having an awareness when you're not at home, that would be extremely helpful in those situations. That's all I got. Do you guys have any questions for me before I hand it over to Chief?
Yeah, about 2 or 3 weeks ago on a Saturday, there were like 500 to 1,000 bicyclists riding. I would say from Centinela up to Olympic. They were harassing drivers. I was just wondering, is anything ever done about that? Or?
You said they were fighting? Do we know about this? Or?
There's a group of bicyclists that ride.
About like 500.
Yes, that has been going on for many, many years, where groups of Ciclavia or different bicycle groups come into the city of Los Angeles, and they ride in groups and run red lights sometimes and do their thing, and then they come and.
Disrupting traffic, but also it's just like a couple of them wanted to grab onto my door handle while I was driving.
They're a rambunctious group. I'm saying this is a problem that we've been experiencing for over 10 years. So you may have just been in the place where now it's like touching you and you're like, oh, buddy, what's going on? But bicyclists, not all of them are like that, but
Do you have a license to come here and do that?
No, they don't have to have a.
no, I mean, they're probably not acting in the most legal fashion, but they get to, that's why they're kind of riding together in a group.
Because I was stuck in traffic. for
Okay,
about 20 minutes.
Can I get your attention for 1 second? We don't like it. But to stop 500 bicycles.
No, I understand.
It would be very, very difficult for a couple police cars.
Let me ask you one other question. What should I do if I'm in that kind of situation? What number
You
should
can
I
call us,
What should I call?
call 911.
Call
It's
911.
it's emergent, it's a block in the street, whatnot. We can arrive, show presence, we'll put it out at a party and call for service. Never be afraid to call us, and then
Okay, the statute will send somebody.
if you say that you're stuck in the street and there are bicyclists surrounding you and they are violating all of the laws of the roadway and running red lights and whatnot, we will come especially to Centinela and Pico, come fast. But we have to get the call for service, so, yeah, so.
So
but
there's like
it's super hard to like.
yeah, there's usually an organized group.
I saw them running the lights and that part.
Yeah.
I accepted that part. What bothered me was like, I was in the left-hand lane. And the guy was trying to grab onto my door handle. You know, and that could cause a problem.
No, that's absolutely unsafe.
That's why we want you to call, and so,
That's
at least we can show presence.
Another hand up before.
I think he has a
We don't have
question.
the enforcement for that very much, because if you have so many of them, they're gonna scatter.
Mhm.
But, you know, if you show up, at least. they'll
At least
scatter.
we can, if it does get really out of hand, at least we can strategically identify a couple people and make a decision if we need more units to arrive, or we want to get out with that 1 or 2 persons. But to try to address the crowd, that would take a strategic planning on our part. Kevin has something to say.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ray Flores. I'm one of the captains with the department overseeing operations. And so, yes, just to kind of add on to that. So we have enforced applicable laws in the past. He's absolutely right. When we get a call and there's hundreds and hundreds of bicyclists, it makes it a little difficult. And so what happens is, number one, we show up. When we show up, then they typically like obey the laws. But if they're not, then we start stopping a few here and there. And then what we learn is then they do not drive through the city, for a period of time. And then we won't hear from them for a while, and then they come back. So yes, we've dealt with this issue for many, many years. And so they're either riding, through the streets, and then, mostly we see them getting together on Sundays, late afternoon, late, right?
Sundays,
Early
and
evening.
in period, times of past, they've had night rides and Saturday nights. Right.
Come from all over. A lot of folks from like Los Angeles area, Venice area, so they get together. I'm not sure where.
They get on social media and they
Yeah.
gather and they say, hey, meet here. And then they phone a friend and then they
They're-
share the page and then they come
They're
through.
typically getting together and they're riding, they have lights on their bicycles, they light up, they have music, and so, they're not too much for a problem, but it is a concern for us when they're starting to grab,
Handles.
And then they're overtaking the light. That's
They used to refer to themselves as critical mass, and I myself have done some enforcement with them, and it is a challenge. Because I will get, I got the person that was at the very end of the pack, and what happens, they end up surrounding the officers by like 500 of the bicyclists. But they still get cited and enforcement can still be done.
Thank you, Alfred. Unless there are other questions, thank you for coming and hand the floor over to Police Chief. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thanks, you guys. I want to just really quickly recognize Community Affairs. They do a fantastic job all across the city, meeting with different neighborhood groups and talking about the issues that are impacting them. You guys just heard briefly from Captain Flores. Captain Flores really kind of underplayed like all of his responsibilities. He oversees all uniform patrol officers in the city of Santa Monica. And it is quite a task, and it's got like the largest number of folks working for him. And obviously our frontline officers are the ones responding to many of the calls for service that get generated. Upwards of 2,400 a week for us. So he's pretty busy, and I wanted him to come because so many of the issues that touch your lives obviously go through his officers. And some very specific issues like we're dealing with towers, those go through Community Affairs and also touch some of his office. Because here recently, we started a new unit called the Crime Impact Team. And it is focused on like a whole myriad of quality of life issues that can come up, including some of the criminal issues that can happen. So we've got a burglar operating in a particular area, or we've got car break-ins in another area, assaultive behavior, whatever the case may be. This very versatile team of officers, it's 4 officers and a sergeant, can focus in on those respective areas, aside from the focused deterrence effort that the neighborhood resource officer brings to bear, because that's very focused on a specific issue. So I wanted to speak real briefly and broadly on some of the preparation that we're doing for certain things. Like the thing that's really on my radar right now is the election. We want to make sure that from our perspective here in Santa Monica, that folks are able to go and vote and without any kind of fear that there's any kind of thing that's going to happen to them in any kind of a poll that we have, any kind of poll place that we have. We're working in conjunction with all of our federal partners that are supporting the election that day, the LA Sheriff's Department, and all the supporting agencies in this area we're all working together. We're all planning and training and sharing information about any kind of trends that we see are starting to percolate, so that our community will be safe during that day. And so elections on a Tuesday, Captain Flores' officers are going to start working with more of them present starting on Friday. And also Captain Villegas' officers we'll start to be out there in the field with a higher level of presence starting Friday through Tuesday in the election. Again, we have to be careful, and we will be, on how we are in the areas of polling places. So because remember, we also don't want to make it feel as though people can't go vote because there's a police officer there, even though they're Santa Monica officers, they're still police officers. And I'm sure there's somebody in the community that's going to be like, so, but nonetheless, I want you to rest assured that I am thinking about it. We are collectively thinking and training and talking about that day. And also, I wanted to take any questions you might have. So there's a few things that have come through recently and through new municipal code, whether it was the changes to our municipal code related to addressing encampments, or, for example, traffic safety is always an issue. So if you guys had any questions around those things, I can sort of take them. Yes, sir.
So we know that sometime in the next few months will be the second reading of the ordinance to reduce speed limits on most of our streets. So I was wondering, from your perspective, if you had any plans or strategies or what you were thinking that once that passes to try to change drivers' behavior and make it safe for those of us that want to cross the street.
So I always surprise Captain Flores because I always tell him I used to be a motor cop for 6 years. So traffic safety is like really near and dear to me. When I first got here, our staffing levels were really low. And so I had to bring the traffic motor officers into patrol to take calls for service. I had to bring in detectives into patrol in order to help take calls for service. So there was a period there where our traffic enforcement was really not where I wanted it to be. And then there were some other things having to do with the city and a speed survey that should have been conducted. And without a speed survey in place, the officers couldn't enforce speed limit violations in some areas. So that made it challenging. And then we went through a staffing crisis in the traffic motor enforcement area, where we were working with like 1.5 officers. And I say 1.5 because one was injured and he was like on the desk, and the other was one that was out there working solo. So now we're rebuilding that unit. So we've got a sergeant and 5 officers that are going to be out there working. Captain Flores has been deploying a specific car that does nothing but traffic enforcement. So then they've been moving through the city in different areas. I reported to council last week that to date, the traffic enforcement unit had issued something like 2,800 traffic citations. I think most of them for some type of moving violation. So with respect to what we plan on doing is just making sure that we're out there and enforcing the speed limits. I think that somewhere down the road, we're going to be at a place where if the community is accepting of it, that we're going to be able to use not only traffic enforcement as a component of it, but also mitigation and changes to the traffic way and how cars and bicycles and pedestrians are moving through these intersections. In addition to things like what Culver City already has, which is red light cameras. I come from a couple of jurisdictions where we had red light cameras and speed cameras in combination with the infrastructure changes and police officers, and it does work. It will lower the traffic accident rate at particular hot zones and hot spots. That does really work. So along with education, right? Along with education. The challenge for us here, that we see is that we are such a transient community with such an impact from LA city drivers into our city that makes it really challenging with the education component. Our pedestrians and those that are fortunate enough to be able to ride a bicycle to work within our community, right? Those folks, I think that there is an opportunity for education there for everyone, I think, as well. Because when I'm driving around, like I can see a wide variety of traffic violations that are occurring. Yes, cars are speeding, cars are running red lights, but they're not the only ones. And so I think that there's a lot of opportunity for improvement in that area. So, but yes, we definitely will be addressing some of those issues.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Do you have any,
Christina had her hand up first.
We have a question on Zoom.
Oh, okay, I'll come back to that. I'll see if I can do it for it.
do you have any, streets that are particularly, violations, speeding, whatever? You know?
Yeah. So I'll give you guys.
Mention Garner.
Yes, it definitely is one of them. I would tell you that Wilshire is challenging. Where we get some really crazy high speeds is on San Vicente, where you see speeds like nearing 100 miles an hour on San Vicente, which is insane. But yes, then there are areas around school zones where I get a lot of complaints from the parents that are trying to ride a bicycle with their son, daughter to work, and they're running into some challenges there, sometimes from other parents going to the same school. So, yes.
What about Barnard? You use the word challenging. I don't see too much enforcement on Barnard, but I do see speeding
The
in
violation.
the afternoon when, you know, the drivers wanna get a little excitement going. What do you think of Barnard?
We'll get them on there.
Thank you. You do some
Yeah,
enforcement.
we'll do some enforcement environment. Yes, sir.
Yeah, good to see it. Thanks for everything you're doing for the city. Can you talk a little bit about how, both from like the state kind of taking a stance where encampments are something that they don't necessarily want to see anymore? And then the new ordinance that the city passed,
Yeah.
what kind of like, are you seeing in terms of actual action and what's happening and what are the challenges that are still there?
So first off, the changes that were enacted by our council do not affect somebody who is just sleeping, okay? I mean, the night that we were having that conversation, I pulled out of our parking garage and in an adjacent property, which belongs to the county, there was somebody sleeping on the sidewalk. He wasn't blocking the sidewalk, he was sleeping along the sidewalk. And, you know, that's not a violation, right, in and of itself. And that's not what we're looking at. What we're looking at after the council's changes.
So like, I don't understand that. Maybe other people do, but could you clarify?
Yeah.
That like, that's just the specific language in the ordinance or what?
So, no, because what we are addressing is when somebody takes over a space and begins to kind of make it their own. And therein lies like the subtle differences in what kind of things they bring to bear that give the officer like the indicia, the understanding that they're dealing with a person who's now taken over like a corner of a sidewalk or a corner of public space, where now he's like beginning to kind of take it as his own. Like the most relevant one that, you know, we can think of is like a tent, right? But it doesn't have to just be a tent. It could be like all the other accoutrements that make the officer kind of think, okay, like he's setting up a camp. There's no tent, but that's a camp. And they recognize it when they see it because they're ticking off different things in their head that they're like, okay, I can't think of all the different things that they're looking for, but it's essentially, let's just say, a bedroll, pots, pans, you know, like then it's starting to look like, hey, they're taking up the space. And so that gives them the opportunity to step into that and say, hey, you can't, there's no camping law in Santa Monica, so here's your warning. Like 9.5 times out of 10, somebody will go, oh, I didn't know. And they pick up their stuff and they move on. For the half or 1 out of 10 that don't, we're like, okay, I'll be back. You know, I'll give you a couple of hours and I'll come back. And they come back, you know, 2-3 hours later, they give the same warning. Sometimes they won't move. And they'll come back maybe a third time, or maybe on the second time, but they'll be like, okay, I warned you, and you gotta move. And if you don't, then they're subject to that arrest citation thing, for which they can either be cited on the spot and let go, or everything picked up and moved to the police station and processed out. So what's occurring? For us, like we've always had an encampment law, right? So we've always been able to address folks that start to build an encampment and say, you can't do that here. Other cities for a long time were saying basically, hey, because of grants passed, like we really can't take action on it. So our hands are tied. Well, for us, our hands weren't tied. I mean, we knew that if we had to approach every single one of these instances with a lot of care. So we approach and we give warnings, and we're very, you know, and here's some references, here's some help. We bring a social service team with us. And always trying to do, and everything's being recorded by the officer, right? They're recording every interaction. And those things are what essentially protected us through a period where the city of Los Angeles lost the ability to be able to say, hey, you're here taking up this encampment space and you can't do that anymore. They handled things differently than we did. So through this entire time, we've been pretty good. Like we handle a ton of calls that are related to homeless folks out and about in situations where sometimes it looks like an encampment. We get there, it's not. Another time we get there, it definitely is, and we do something. Other cities now are finally kind of like, oh, now I've got the opportunity to do something. What is challenging is that maybe in the cities surrounding us, some jurisdictions are doing more. And so there's a displacement effect, like folks don't have anywhere to go and they begin to kind of move around. And so we feel it on would be our eastern border, Centinela. We feel it here in your neighborhood as they begin to kind of come towards Santa Monica on the Venice side. And so that requires us, and this is what we've been doing, is engaging in a lot of relationship building and a lot of communications with LAPD and saying, hey, if you're doing any kind of special operation to address issues, like let us know so that we're aware, because as you do these things, inevitably we start feeling it. And it's, I wish it was better, but there are times when it's very challenging to get other entities to give us a heads up in plain speak, right, as to what's going on. Because it is, like, you see it, you definitely see it on our beach, the difference between Venice and Santa Monica, you definitely see it on Centinela. But when they begin to do their work in the city of LA, like if we're not aware, like then we start to have a migration. And therein lies, I think, probably the most challenging component of the new law, and how we have to now be constantly figuring out where it's coming from and getting on it with the warnings and everything else that we do. Very challenging. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I had an online question from Janet, who's been waiting for a while, and then hopefully this works. Janet?
Thank you. Hi, Chief. It's Janet McLaughlin.
Hey, Janet.
A couple quick questions. Number one, how is the officer doing who was stabbed? And number two, do we know any more about the suspect? I did read that he came from New York and had a prior domestic violence restraining order there. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, the officer is recovering physically. I don't know what you know about a knife assault in this case, but I mean, it's a very personal, very close kind of a thing that can happen. And so my greater concern is how we move forward, right? How he processes and gets through this period, because it is, like I said, like a very close thing. And so, you know, my hope is that he recovers physically and that he takes his time and comes back. And at the same time, internally, we've dealt with like a lot of officer-related injuries. Our traffic service officers have been assaulted, our police officers have been assaulted in the course of doing their work. Not to this level, but certainly you're talking about like, you know, sprained knees, knee injuries, shoulders, hands, wrists, fingers. And so we experienced a lot of that throughout the summer. And internally, the police department, to us, is rightfully so. It's kind of like their house, their safety place, right? And so to have someone come up literally to the threshold and then have that assault occur right there, a little disconcerting. And so we've been working through the last couple of weeks, just making sure that we're focused on the overall mission of public safety at the same time that we process, you know, the reality of unpredictable behavior like this. And it's not easy, but you know, we're working through it, and always just making sure that we stay focused, as we really talked about a lot, is in the mission of delivering the public safety to our community, because that just can't ever stop. I mean, that's what we're on every day. And while I'm talking about traffic, I wanted to mention our traffic service officers on average are handing out 4,000 to 5,000 parking citations a month, a week. And why that's important to me is because I recognize just how our parking is at such a premium in our community. And it's their work of like constantly checking on cars, constantly going around. And I got to tell you that if you ever have an issue where somebody is not following the parking rules for your particular neighborhood, please call us. There's a specific number, and there's a specific dispatcher that just only deals with parking issues, and they will dispatch a parking officer throughout the day or the evening to go in and check out whatever your situation is. And that does occur pretty regularly, so I urge you, to use them for that issue.
I guess I'll two other hands up, and that's all we have time for, one.
Yeah.
First of all, thank you. I'm sorry for the officer and police recovery. I'm very appreciative of you all and the work you all do. And so on Lincoln, we also have a lot of challenges, as the other area, kind of, I guess, like Sentinella and the beach. And living near there, we also see a lot of people drinking on the street that then, of course, end up becoming violent or having issues. So we try to call the Santa Monica people, and the dispatchers just lost in space. They don't really care. What do you guys do? Like, so for someone who is drinking in public, is that like you pick them up, arrest them? It's just a citation? How does that work?
So we have a lot of municipal codes, and every single one of them gives the officer the opportunity to have contact with someone. And what we're finding is that in those contacts, and specifically the crime impact team that's being run out of Captain Flores' divisions, is that those officers are specifically, first off, they look at the crime map, right? And they'll look at what areas of the city are being impacted by what. And then they'll go into that area with the focus of, because it's not just a shotgun, like they're looking at specifically to impact and make a change wherever the issue is brewing. But in this case, like if we see somebody that's drinking, a lot of times what we find is that somebody who's willing to just, break the law in that kind of situation, they're usually carrying a bunch of other things with them. They'll either have drugs, or they'll have a dirk or dagger or knife that's not illegal. Or they'll have a probationary warrant from somewhere other than Santa Monica. So that gives us the opportunity to not just write them a ticket for drinking in public, but they'll have something that's more serious, a more serious felony that is hanging over them. And that gives us the ability to pick them up, take them to jail. Usually another jurisdiction will come pick them up and take them away. So we do respond, and I totally empathize and recognize the challenges of calling 911 and going through the series of questions, but I urge you to call, because if we don't get the call, yes, there's a prioritization, right? So somebody drinking in public compared to like a really busy night and there's like a whole bunch of priorities going on, we may not be able to get to it, but if we do, and you make the call, either way, you're gonna create a hotspot for that, right? So giving us a data point. And so that matters. That really does matter. The times when we are most successful in making an arrest or closing the loop on a hot call or any kind of thing that happens is when a resident stays on the phone with us and endures the questions and everything else that comes from dispatch. And this is why they're asking the questions, because when the officers are going to the call, they're literally kind of flying a little blind and only going by what you're saying. And they have to make inferences and thoughts about like what they hear. That's a lot of the reasons why some of those calls, they ask them questions. And don't forget, we have a drone that is also now listening to the call and dispatching themselves ahead of the officer. So even before the dispatcher is able to get the information to the officer to dispatch, the drone might already be on its flight heading over there, because we are listening to the call from the resident to the call taker.
I was just trying, this is helpful actually, because the neighborhood watch guys came by and they were great, and they were just a call. It does scare me having the guys drinking as well near the high school, right? Because Venice or Lee County and Pico. I wasn't calling 911 for someone drinking alcohol. I'm trying to be very careful with 911. But is it more appropriate to call that, or we'll get a better response for if they're actually drinking in public?
So the captain does not want me to tell you to call for that. So he called the watch band office.
Or call dispatch directly, and then you can give her the number, but yes.
It's called your dispatch versus city dispatch.
Yes, it's just one dispatch center. Yeah, so
310-458-8491.
And I'll make sure it gets in this week's newsletter. We're trying to put it at least once a month.
But
Maybe it should be permanently resided file.
310-458-8491. And if you in your head are trying to triage 911, don't. If it appears to be an urgent, push 911.
Well, you could Santa Monica or LA, both.
But we would rather you.
It'd be our
What?
911 would be us.
Well, last question.
Yeah.
Thank you, Cooper.
Good to see you.
I just want to thank everybody for being here, for you guys being here. I'm just gonna put a plug in for the Citizens Police Academy. I think I did it right after COVID. It was incredible because we got unbelievable people who work in the police department. They want to work here. They're so humble. We have big enough as a jurisdiction, there's some pretty cool stuff you guys get to do, you're data driven, you're trying new things, and we are so lucky to have the police department. All very humble. I noticed that too. You all have amazing personal lives and you want to work crazy hours. It's probably the toughest job that you can is. Playing this, I really appreciate you guys. They're really well suited. You guys are willing to do and stuff and have a sense of humor and it's really, I'm proud of what's saying. The police department, the police officers.
I really want to thank all of you, and I'll wrap it up by just saying how much I appreciate you guys giving us the opportunity to talk to you. It's really cool to see the school superintendent in the background, and I would say that that we share similarities in that teachers, I think, have some of the really toughest jobs in our society, and thank God for them though, because I think they're amazing. So I feel really blessed to be a part of the community and to be with you guys, and so thank you for your support. We're going to continue to do everything we can to always get it right. Thank you.
And before we jump into the school portion, I know Chief alluded to this briefly, but even if you think like it's bicyclists that have come and gone and there's nothing that can be done, call and report it, because he alluded to the pins that get dropped. And if like every Friday at 5 p.m. people are calling and complaining about bicycles at the corner of, I don't know, Lincoln and Pico, it's going to start showing a trend map, and they actually use that to inform where they start sending people. So please don't hesitate to report stuff, even if you think there's no action item that can be taken.
That's great.
Thank you, officers. All right. Moving on to school matters. We've got Steve and Jessica, correct, here to give a brief update on John Muir and our local campus before we jump into the school bond discussion.
Thank you, Sean. Good evening, everyone. My name is Steve Richardson. I'm the Executive Director of Elementary Schools in Santa Monica, Malibu. And we're here with.
I'm Jessica Risch, and this is my 29th year in FMMUSD, and I'm looking around and have the honor of working side by side with several of you here.
I'm half that amount. But love being here. My kids have gone through the system and just a thrill. So we have good news. We are looking to reopen the Ocean Park Neighborhood School at the Ocean Park between 5th and 6th at that site in August of 25. It's upon us. I mean, as you look at it now, it's a work in progress.
That's why we came to give you the heads up. There's gonna be kids and people, and Los Amigos Park will be school grounds again.
Yeah, and so a couple of things since the school was relocated. John Muir and Smash were there for how long?
1996, 1997. Muir went first, and then.
So 25 years. And we've been really thinking about how do we make that. We had two schools co-located on that site, one being a school of choice and one being a neighborhood school. And we've done a lot of talking with educational partners about what we want this to look like. And there's a real strong feeling around, we want that to be a neighborhood school. We want people to be able to walk to that school, bring their kids there, bring their grandkids there. No, we'll keep it. We want to keep them close, right? So, and as we did that, we talked to a lot of folks about what that would look like. And really, there was a resounding kind of message around neighborhood school, honoring what had been going on there for both Muir and Smash over the last few decades, and it being one school. Having two schools on a site is real tricky. I've been doing this almost my 30th year in education, and I think I've yet to see a two-school situation that didn't come with problems. And it was really a unanimous feeling from all the folks I talked to around that. So with that, today we have two purposes, and we will be brief. We know we have other things on the agenda. We want to, give a little bit of information, but we're also asking you for your feedback. And so you'll see one of our colleagues, Diana Buchaya. Thank you, Diana, who's passing some information out. You'll see a flyer that gives a real 30,000-foot kind of view of what we're talking about. And on that flyer, you'll also see some dates for upcoming events, and you'll see a QR code that will give you a chance to give us some feedback on what we're thinking. It will give you information and give us some information back. And so all of you, if you live in this neighborhood, will be, has anyone received a hard copy of this yet?
It's in US mail, but we don't know if it's.
Yeah.
To use it.
I think it went up to the valley, it's coming back. But you are getting one, you will all get one, it has a QR code on it. And we've also passed out from the survey, there are some defining of the core values that, you know, both SMASH and Mirror shared, particularly around a humanistic approach, a commitment to social emotional learning, and then some things that we really want to lean into around our district goals around project-based learning. We also want to look at as a next step, a next iteration of the school on this site, really lean into a community impact piece and a global impact piece. We want people who want to give back to their community, develop good citizens, and also understand that they're citizens of the world. And that's, I think, always been the ethos of that campus. And so we're really excited to do that. You do have some definitions to make some sense of some of the things. You have a chance to give us feedback through the survey, and there'll be some kind of rating scales and also an open where you can kind of write whatever you want, any questions you have. And so we can, you know, as we're continuing to shape the school, not for long. I had it tested 3 ways. All right, so we will have that. But you can take a moment, look at this, just anything to add to that? I know that was a mouthful.
If you know people who have 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, because it takes a moment for people to realize, oh, there will be a school back there, like help spread the word, because we will also have TK, transitional kindergarten for 4-year-olds, starting next year on that campus. So
I see Judy nodding.
yeah.
She has 2 4-year-olds.
Amazing.
She's raising everybody up to the 4-year.
Been doing that a long time. And there are some events. So there's one coming up this Sunday, October 20th, 1 to 4 at the Los Amigos Park. So we'll get to see kind of what's going on. We'll see some renderings of the building and a chance to break bread together, to have some experiences together, and just to get really excited, get people excited about the school and the neighborhood.
Rediscover Center will be there doing a making project, since project-based learning is an ethos of our district. Ocean Park area musicians geared toward kids and adults will be performing, so enjoy some music and get a feel for being back on that space.
We're really excited about it. And remember, you can give feedback, you can ask questions. There will be permission granted. Actually, that was just for you, Judy.
Yeah, I knew it was just about me.
We have a question in the back. We have time for a question.
Well, clarification, I think you're being a little like incomplete. If you're calling it a neighborhood school, but it's SMASH, and the neighborhood kids can go there if they choose. Otherwise, they have to choose somewhere else to permit if they don't want the new model. If they just want a regular neighborhood school, this is not what they're getting.
Well, this would be a school that our district, the pedagogy that our district's very committed to with, I don't know if you caught it, but the next iteration, really leaning into the service learning piece, the global citizen piece.
Kids, or is it
It's neighborhood kids.
and SMASH, or only the kids who live in this caption area?
It will be current SMASH students, and then neighborhood kids get prioritized. If there is space, we have an intra-district process that people can apply to, but it is prioritizing people who live in this, in the school boundary.
To clarify for people who don't know, that intra-district process is true for any school.
Any school, that's always been the case.
This is a SMASH school.
This,
No, this is an Ocean Park neighborhood event.
Yeah, but
The SMASH model.
yes.
Oh, sorry, I thought you meant Sundays and
No.
well, and I think it also has elements that both Mirror and SMASH have experienced over
Not a
time.
traditional elementary school.
No.
It's the educational practice and the philosophy that our district is.
You're walking around there, we should just say yes or no.
That's not what we're saying right now. We're going off for feedback right
Okay,
now. Okay? I appreciate it though.
okay, and then also on the 20th, will somebody be able to talk to somebody about the parking restrictions on Fifth Street?
That isn't the purpose of that event, but I can give you my email and maybe connect you to the right person.
Okay.
All right, s.richardson@smmusd.org.
Okay.
All right, we'll talk before I leave.
All right. Thank you for the update.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Moving, I don't know what I did with my iPad. Moving on to school bond discussion. We're gonna have presentations, both pro bond and against the bond. Those presentations are limited to 10 minutes. I'm hoping it's closer to 5 minutes. And then open Q&A and discussion after that. Steve Masarich, is that the? Massetti, sorry. Sorry, long day. Is gonna kick off and start on behalf of the bond. Podium is yours. It's up to you if you want me back here driving the presentation or if you want to sit here.
I'm perfectly comfortable doing that.
Cool. I'll get it up while you
Get it up that
start
day.
talking.
Thank you.
And the clock is running.
Oh, shit. Not that one.
I know.
Thank you very much for doing this. Thank you. My name is Steve Massetti. I am the bond program manager consultant for the school district. I'm also here tonight in part to help the committee and really explain to you what the bond entails. So I'm here mostly to provide information and to answer any questions. I know we have a very limited time and we all respect your time, so I'm going to try to go very quickly. It normally takes me a lot longer than 5 minutes to go through this. But I will do what I can to get through it as quick as I can. I'm going to skip over some stuff because we have such a limited time. Obviously, you're all aware we have a great school district. The important thing from this slide is we have two separate school facility improvement districts. One is for Santa Monica, one is for Malibu. You may have heard that the county screwed up printing the ballots, and so they both appear on both ballots, but you'll only be voting for Measure QS in Santa Monica, and they'll only be voting for Measure M in Malibu. And each community will only pay for the bond that covers its own community. So a little bit about Prop 39, which is the proposition that gives us the authority to go forward with school bonds. Not a lot of detail to get into here other than we need 55% to pass. And Prop 39 requires a bond oversight committee as well as annual financial and performance audits. I'm going to skip over the LCAP goals. This slide I think is important. It shows the age of our buildings. The average age of the buildings in Santa Monica are 70 years old. You know, it's in the early 30s, there was an earthquake. So most of our, a big earthquake in Long Beach, that actually led to the creation of the state agency that does our permitting. But we had a lot of construction through the 30s and 40s, even into the 50s with, you know, the baby boomers coming through. And then after that, we really didn't build much until the 90s when we put in a bunch of portables to relieve overcrowding. And we're now in the process of getting rid of those portables. We still have some work to do on that. There are a lot of benefits to improve schools. Most of them have to do with higher performance and lower truancy rates. I'm going to skip these because instead of telling you what the categories are, I'm going to just talk to you about some of our projects. Also, because I have a feeling you're only interested in a few of our schools here, you don't really want to hear about what's happening at Lincoln. I'm going to skip over some of those projects. I'll mention them, but not get into any detail. I will, however, talk about JAMS because our kids from here will go to JAMS. At JAMS, we're going to replace the dilapidated old science building. Some of you may have kids who have gone through that. It's in pretty bad shape. We're going to be building a brand new 34,000 square foot science, technology, engineering, and mathematics building. Some great things in there, some state-of-the-art lab classrooms, engineering lab, maker space. What I really like about this site is the interior common space here on the lower right-hand picture is an area where they'll be able to actually activate that space. It's not, you know, a lot of us, if we didn't go to school in this area, especially, we're used to classroom buildings that have classrooms along the side, lockers, and a hallway, and that's it. we're trying to take that common space, we don't have hallways per se anymore, and activate that. So, they may have the robotics team, for example, working out there. And then kids who walk by and can see that can start to engage in it. And it's something that they wouldn't even see if it was just done in a classroom and out of the way. Thank you. Lincoln will be doing a STEM building as well. Skip Roosevelt, probably can skip Grant. A couple projects there. Franklin will do an early learning building. I'm going to talk about Samo High, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about what will happen at Mere Smash as well, or the Ocean Park neighborhood school. Samo High, when the district started looking at the things that needed to happen on campus 15 years ago, one of the recommendations was, hey, the first building that should go is the business building because it's old and it's not in good shape and it doesn't serve its purpose anymore. And the business building is still there for now. Our plan is to replace the business building with a new student services, student center building. And that has the things that you'd expect in there, right? So it has a health and wellness center, it has college and career counseling, have a number of classrooms. It'll also have a black box theater, which is a performance, but also learning theater space, smaller, of course, than Barnum. If you're familiar with productions at Samo High, you may hear about the humanities building. You may have gone to plays in the humanities building. That is a black box theater. It just happens to be in what was the old library. We'd like to build a new professional level black box theater, which would be kind of on this western side of the new building, kind of opposite of Barnum. So that massing they'll kind of reflect each other, and it helps us make up the elevation. There's a lot of elevation difference on that campus. There will be a number of projects that are district-wide. We implement safety and security in all of our projects, but sometimes we have to do something special like adding additional electronic locks or intrusion alarms at certain campuses. We will have a district-wide technology upgrade. A lot of that's the backbone, the infrastructure that we don't really get to see. But we're working to improve outdoor wireless access as well. And then the last thing I want to mention, and there's obviously a lot of others that that we could get to, but is at the Ocean Park neighborhood school, what we'd like to do is take the old admin space and move it. This is one of the last campuses where the admin's at the center of campus and you can get buzzed onto campus. And once you're on campus, you've got access. For safety and security purposes, that is not ideal. So we'd like to take the front portion. I think we call it Building B. I'm sure that there's another name on campus for it. Like take a couple of those classrooms, turn that into admin. So you would get into the from the parking lot, you would have to go through the admin space to get onto campus. This is something we've implemented, of course, at a lot of our campuses. That project would also then take what was the old admin space and renovate it into an innovation lab. So our kids can be doing more of that hands-on learning. And it would redo the parking lot, which has been problematic, I think, for you. Well, frankly, it's 2 parking lots. We'll make it 1. Drop-off will get better, as well as pickup, of course. So this brings us to, there's a lot of projects I didn't talk about on here, obviously, but what we've got here is the estimates from our architects to say this is the construction cost. This is that middle column. That is a pure construction cost. So that doesn't include design fees, permit fees, inspection, furniture, some of the audio visual. So we then have to add those costs to the main construction costs and come up with our total project cost estimate, adding up the projects that I've talked about, as well as reserving about 10% of that cost for contingency. We end up at about $495 million, which is why we have a $495 million bond on the ballot. We had looked at some larger bonds, which would have included an additional building at the Samo High campus, as well as the Lincoln Pool likely. But it was a bit too much. So we kind of pared that back and we've now come with $495 million. The impact to taxpayers is that you will be assessed on your property tax, you'll be assessed at a rate of $28.70 per 100,000. So this is your assessed value, not the market value of your price, not the number you see when you look on Zillow. It's a number you see when you look at your tax bill. If your assessed value is $1 million, it would be $287 a year. And I know I didn't make 5 minutes, but hopefully I got pretty close. So I think probably now Nikki, and then I'm willing to answer questions whenever.
Yes,
I don't know how to switch this.
I got
Okay.
Thank you.
You mind if I sit there?
Yeah. You have to do it, or just press the right arrow every time. It's up to you if you want me to do it.
Let me know if you want me to. I'm happy to.
Yeah, before I get started, somebody did send me the Smash email though that they sent to their families, and it says, "Dear Smash families, it's exciting to see the construction progress on our Fifth Street and Ocean Park campus. Come celebrate with our Ocean Park neighbors in the Los Amigos Park field on Sunday." So they're definitely calling it Smash still. All right. So my name is Nikki Kohlhoff, and I have been a Santa Monica resident since 1997, parent of 2 kids who just finished 15 years in SMMUSD. Started out here in Ocean Park, doing story time here in this library. I'm in Sunset Park now. I'm also the vice president of the Friends of Sunset Park. I did sign the ballot opposition argument for the bond. And for my day job, I am a corporate finance lawyer. So generally this stuff makes sense to me. And so that's why I've come to believe that there is no accountability at play here. So where are we now? These are all of the previous SMMUSD bonds. Since 2006, those are the ones shown there, $1.33 billion, almost $2 billion with interest. This is in addition to the 1.3 billion that we also are paying for SMC. And now the school district wants another $890 million for 8,341 kids. Not all of that is in Santa Monica, but it begs the question of why we are still at $2.2 billion then for a little over 8,000 kids, and we are nowhere near done with our campuses. In addition to all of the sources of capital funding, we have operating revenue that we as Santa Monica residents have been very generous with approving also over time. We have the joint use agreement, we have the Measure Our Parcel tax, we have YY and GSH, which were both sales taxes. We have the transfer tax. And then we also, because we are called basic aid, we have so much in property taxes that we get to keep our extra above the state allocation, which is another 15 million. So we have 69 million extra dollars beyond state funding every year. And from that, it should be more than enough to cover repairs and maintenance. But that is not what we do in SMMUSD. We let our buildings rot. So what have we gotten for the 1.33 billion? Waste and broken promises. The district said it would repair leaky roofs, install HVAC district-wide, and we're not done with any of those things that they promised. They promised to replace the trailers. That's also still not done. And 2/3 of them will still be at our elementary schools after this next bond. They're only removing 9. They'll say 12, but that's because a few from the last bond actually didn't get done and they're bumping it forward. The district priorities just don't align with our community's priorities for construction. We got defective new buildings. They spent $45 million on a middle school auditorium. That is insane. It still requires a special person to work the sound also. Lincoln Middle School field didn't drain. This was after spending a year being closed. It didn't drain properly, and the first big rain, that is not dirt, that is cork floating away. The Samoa air conditioning failed again in the last heat wave in multiple new buildings. More defective new buildings. So $200 million they spent on one building at Samo High that opened in 2021. That is the Discovery building. Faucets don't work. HVAC doesn't work. Leaky roofs, and it has foul smells from time to time. My kids had to be moved from classrooms because it smelled so bad. That's in part due to the flexible construction that was experimental and made it so ridiculously expensive. That actually is when the air conditioning was broken on. It was 57 degrees in the classroom. These are like a designer favorite. They're called bleacher stairs, but what it means is the actual stairs are this teeny little thing, and then this is sort of benches because it looks cool in designs, but it means the kids, like 1,000 kids at a time, are going up there's just these narrow stairs. It's a design flaw. Then the gold gym, that's the gym we just spent $100 million on. It has glass walls, which the community protested. I found my old email from 2.5 years ago where we said, why are you doing glass walls? And it listed the problems. People went to the school board meeting and we were, of course, ignored because that's what they do. Fast forward, we now have a practice gym. It can't hold a major competition because it has less seating than the North Gym. With sun, there's the volleyball line judge wearing sunglasses inside the gym. So now we have to buy expensive shades. But why did we spend $100 million on a fancy glass structure that we need to buy shades for? Incidentally, Manhattan Beach spent $39 million on their gym instead of $100 million, and they can seat 2,200 people. It just works. But we didn't follow Manhattan Beach's lead. We tend not to look at best practices. Unsafe conditions. They also discontinued third-party oversight, while removing arsenic from McKinley soil. Millions fighting the community about PCBs instead of cleaning it up. Again, air conditioning that doesn't work. Anyone who was at the candidate forum at Lincoln Middle School felt that air conditioning not working. You also saw those giant scrubbers in the back because they didn't upgrade the HVAC there. They can't take filters, so they had to bring scrubbers in because they didn't upgrade the HVAC. They also have no plans to upgrade to add air conditioning to the North Gym of Samo High. So we have no air conditioning in our competition gym. They wouldn't spend $300,000 on filters for clean air until a parent called them on it and got the state to give a grant for $1.6 million to do it. And now you'll see in your flashy flyers, though, that they're promising to put in air filtration with the bond. Really disingenuous. There was a chlorine leak at Samo High that a contractor caused and it injured some students, and the bathrooms are gross. In addition, they demolished our cultural resources over community outcry and pleas from preservation experts. So on the far left there, that's the Muir Woods mural, which they just let crumble to bits and then had to remove. This is the demolition of the history building, of course, where there were, 6,000 people who signed a petition. The National Trust for Historic Preservation said, don't tear it down. Our local conservancy also, there's Dr. Shelton when he was Samo High principal surveying the destruction. Mario Fondaminardi, I think a lot of you know him, he drew a great plan for turning the history building into a library and student center. And they said, no, that's too expensive. Guess what they're building next? What he just told you, a $100 million student center. It could have been in the history building with an ocean view, but again, they didn't listen. And now to the school near and dear to your heart, they let Muir Smash crumble to bits, water damage, mold from improper maintenance. They are now spending $70 million to redo that, and they're not engaging with the community. We have not been asked also school-wide whether we want that to be Smash or whether we agree with you guys that it should be an actual neighborhood school. It's really shameful. So, well, you're familiar with what that looks like. Also, how do you have a $70 million error and nobody gets fired? Lack of accountability. So here's where we end up. The bond is a blank check. It can be spent on anything. Read the actual bond language. Land acquisition, housing, computers. They even have in there as one of the points, they are going to do a housing feasibility study to build housing on our school properties as well. That's in the bond. There is no legally binding project list. What he just showed you is what they say right now is their next plan, but they are not obligated to do it at all. And they have never in the past stuck to the plan they presented before it. Bond Oversight Committee is really a joke. All they can confirm, sorry, I know there's somebody in here who said one at one point. I went to the most recent one, there were all of 4 people there. All they can confirm is money was spent on projects. When you have a blank check and every project counts, There's nothing to confirm. Same thing with the CPA. All they confirm is you have receipts for projects. That's it. Finally, we still, even though in 2018, they promised us the next thing we were going to do, the very first thing was form a master plan. We still don't have one. We have a bunch of little plans for campuses that allegedly run through what they call ed specs, which is them saying, oh, we have to build bigger classrooms to have bigger class sizes. That's not what we want. We want more open space. We want smaller class sizes. They're not listening. If you look at all of their little diagrams, we don't have anywhere that says, how much does it actually cost to finish a school site? How long is it going to take to do all of that? How can you possibly know that this is the right $500 million when we're not looking at all of that big picture? The first project at every site has been prioritized for preschool, which may be nice, but it's not required of us. Kids are still going to be in trailers because we chose to add preschools instead. Fiscally irresponsible. We have declining enrollment, but we keep building more. Property and owners and renters will both pay for 30 years. There are exceptions for the pass-through. There is no senior exemption for bonds. They started projects in this last bond that they can't finish just to hold you hostage for the next one, which is super irresponsible. Also, conflicts and engineering. Ed Code says school district funds and services can't be used to campaign. This kind of feels like campaigning here. Dr. Shelton's the superintendent. Steve Massetti owns Massetti Consulting that has a $20 million contract, $4 million a year to manage the bond program. He gets paid by this bond. You all need to know that. These are all of the donations just from September 30th, the reporting from folks who get money from the bond. Look at that. Erickson Hall, $30,000 to the Yes campaign. They have 3 contracts that only happen if you say yes to this bond. Also overseas travel with a contractor. Here is Dr. Shelton and the Chief Operating Officer, Carrie Upton, in Portugal with one of the contractors on that Discovery building that doesn't work. They went in 2022 on a boondoggle. So why is that okay? So it's time for accountability. We need to pass a bond at some point for legitimate construction on our campuses, but we can't pass it until we have a project list, and we want an outside audit of where the money went. So we're asking you to say no, so we can get an audit, and then we can move forward in a responsible manner. So I have yard signs. That's the QR code to the website. If you'd like a yard sign, you can visit there and email the email.
You guys want to sit down or stand? It's whatever. We're happy if you, for either way, maybe sit down so you're both equal. Or stand, either way.
Questions for this open, John first, then Will.
So, Ms. Caldwell, you seem really knowledgeable about all these issues. You came on and said you were an expert. Why don't you run for school board and make change from everything?
You know what? I've actually been asked to run. Thanks for a vote of confidence. No, what I don't appreciate is I will answer, is we shouldn't have to run for school board to get common sense accountability from our elected officials and from our administration. We should be able to say, hey, that building doesn't work, and I don't have to run to school board to make it, run for school board to make it work. I have a full-time job. I put a lot of time and effort into educating people. I think I've done that here tonight. I hope people vote with a little more. Oh, are you Gleam's husband?
What kind of question is that?
Okay.
Let's move on. Will.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Here. I'm gonna ask you a question. If the bond is defeated, what do each of you do? In other words, what do you do?
You want to answer? You want me to answer? Okay.
Successful. What could you guys do?
Sure.
And I just want to reiterate the question,
Oh,
because I don't think people
they
are
probably
watching
didn't.
here. If the bond is defeated, what are the next steps? What happens?
Sure. So we still have some projects that are under construction. You know, obviously we've got the Mere Smash building that is under construction, as well as Rogers and McKinley. We would continue with those, finishing out those projects. We do have the project list that I went through. Those are projects that we've designed, with the exception of Samo High. We're just starting the Samo High Student Services Building design. The rest of them are designed and almost permitted. In other words, they've been submitted to the permitting agency to get permitted. They would sit on the shelves, and if the district were to pass a bond in the future, as long as that permit hasn't expired, we'd be able to get right into construction with those. If you don't, I know what his follow-up question is. It's what happens if a bond, do you mind if I answer that? Okay. If the bond does pass, we're ready to go into construction right away. So the first project at Grant would start construction in December. If the bond passes in November, we plan to start the first project in December. And then we've got 3 projects that will start in June, and then in June of 25. And then 2 following projects would come, which would be Franklin and the Samo High project, would happen not until 2026.
And Steve and I actually,
we're not
Steve
best
and I
friends.
actually, yeah. We get along, and I respect Steve's work on the project because he can hold he's willing to sit down and have a conversation, which I think most people would say nobody else in the district does, which is why there's a lot of frustration. My answer to what happens if it doesn't pass is we want an outside audit. We want a county or state audit of what happened to money, and we can come back in 2 years. They have enough money and enough on the back burner to wait 2 years, and also to solidify a project list that we know is what we want. There are a lot of families in the community who don't think that our end result at schools should be a teeny little U10 soccer field, because we've added a makerspace and this and a that. We don't need all the built space. So a lot of us don't actually agree that the current plans are necessarily the best for our community and could stand some rework with real community input. They'll say they've had a lot of meetings over time, which they have, but they kind of wore people down until they got to a meeting where people didn't exist. And then, it just, they don't listen. They kind of go until their plan gets through, but it's not what most people want. Well, it does, because if you pass it, there's zero accountability, because the board doesn't care. The school board keeps going until they keep working until the school board tells them to stop, which means until 4 people tell them to stop.
Alan, you had a question?
Okay, kind of rework the question because I didn't think the answer was that satisfactory. What are the consequences of the bond not passing?
We won't build any of the things that I just talked about.
Okay.
If it doesn't pass and the district passes it in 2 years, they'll cost more. And, we hear about inflation a lot. That, of course, occurs across all industries. In construction, we call it escalation. Excuse me.
What I'm trying to say is that if the bond does not pass, none of those projects, except which already started, will go forth.
That's right. Sorry, I probably should have said directly that before. Thank you for clarifying.
This is sort of on a lighter note, but thank you, because those are excellent. I hope that you take those suggestions and work together, because it seems like you can build accountability. It's about makerspaces. I coach millennials and Gen Zs, and I do a lot of work with Alpha and I love makerspaces, and I encourage anyone to really look at what a makerspace is. There's an international movement, and it's about older and younger generations teaching kids and adults how to make things. And that's profoundly influential in helping kids get ready for the real world. So I was excited to hear that you got it here.
Thank you.
I think with makerspaces, the issue is whether you need an entire separate space on, say, an elementary school for a makerspace. As one elementary teacher put it, a makerspace at an elementary is a big room with a box of Legos and a broken 3D printer. You'd probably disagree that that's what's in that room. But when you're already programmed most of the day with what the state requires you to do, you don't have a lot of time, and you're in elementary school. Your classroom should be a makerspace, and to spend $10 million on a makerspace that takes up what used to be grass and playing, like the elementary schools, some of them you're not allowed to run on the blacktop because it's too crowded. That's not okay. None of them are gonna have real grass by the end of this. It's all gonna be little teeny turf fields. And as far as working together, it would be lovely, except Dr. Shelton has what I call his super secret cabinet meetings. And so he didn't allow anyone to come to the bond campaign meetings for the entire year and a half, except for the people he selected. The school board has ratcheted down the amount of time you can speak at a meeting to 6 minutes. They keep no written record, and they say by law they're not obligated to. So if you wanted to see the written public comments from 2 meetings ago, they don't exist. There's no way to give input because you don't get the meetings. When they did the town hall for the San Mohai plan, they did it on Zoom and you couldn't ask a question. Okay. And then in 2022, when we came back, we had a whole bunch of people commenting to change design. Nothing happened. They're too far down the path, or, you know, they just don't want to meet. The working together hasn't happened. And so.
I don't think you mean San Mohai. The San Mohai campus plan was done in like 2016. It wasn't.
Well, it's changed every single time. So yes, so the Discovery Building in phase 3, when there was a big dog and pony show and we weren't allowed to actually comment on town hall. They also took off of Zoom. You can't see who's on the school board meetings anymore.
You're talking about
because they
school
didn't
board
want-
meetings, not our meetings.
No, the 2 were big Zoom meetings and you couldn't talk.
Okay.
Other questions?
Just a quick question. Thank you very much. So aside from voting no, which sounds like a good idea, what can we do as citizens just to support an audit? Like, is there anything that can be done?
You can look at our audits if you want. You can look at our audits online if you'd like.
And I apologize, sir. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Probably would be smart for me, but
There-
what are you
yeah.
asking for?
Yes.
Additional audit?
So their audits are the audits of receipts spent on construction, and I don't doubt that they didn't spend the money on construction, but that's all you can check when there's no project required by the bond. That's why it's a blank check. So yes, first is vote no. Go to the website, sign up to show that you oppose this, because they are intimidating people to not vote against it. Somebody who took a yard sign who lives near Grant told me the next morning they already had an email from the Grant PTA president saying, why did you do this? On the Grant PTA Facebook group, sorry, not Grant, San Mohai Facebook group, you're not even allowed to comment in opposition to the bond because PTA has supported the bond. Literally, they post yes on QS, sign up to volunteer, and turn off the comments. If you try to post no, or that you want to vote no, or that you're suggesting there's something wrong, they remove the comments. It's entirely undemocratic. All of the endorsements you'll see on their materials didn't ask the no side for any information before doing the no endorsement. So as far as moving on to an audit, then we will need communities that we have to press pause first. We can't do it without the pause. And then we have to work with local and county and state officials to get a real audit in here, like other districts have been able to do for a variety of items.
Judy, you have a question?
I don't have a question so much as I question a lot of this negative comment that's going on, and I don't want to repeat it. I don't want you to repeat it. I am very much in favor of this bond and very much in favor of working with the school district about all the projects as they go forward, because there are ways to interact about them. I worked for the school district for about, I don't know, 11 or 12 years or something like that. And my programs were in every school. And I know how much these buildings need to be fixed up or completely replaced. And I don't want you to take what she's saying as the absolute, this is the way it should be. I am going to be voting yes, and I'm going to be as involved as I possibly can, and I hope that you will be too.
Why don't you trust what she says?
What?
Why don't you trust what she says? You said just don't trust her. That's what you're saying.
I don't think she's saying she doesn't trust her. I think she's saying do your own homework.
Well, no, she's saying she doesn't like a negative comment, and that again is why there's no actual work here, because if you say it doesn't work, you get called negative. I just put a bunch of facts of the current state of our facilities up there. Facts are what they are. I am not negative. I'm presenting the situation on the ground. And if our students aren't in healthy situations, we shouldn't want that.
Yeah, so I just really want to say, I too support this school bond because I realize that kids have one chance to learn, right? You're 7 years old today, 2-year delay is what she's proposing. You're going to give these kids zero opportunity to learn in an environment that we have the ability to provide at $287 per $1 million of assessed debt. You need to think about what that means if you live in an apartment complex that's worth $3 million. That means that's $750 or so over the course of the year that landlord will pass on to those tenants. I think it's wrong to try to prevent a small expenditure for the future of our kids based on what I hear are a bunch of grievances from somebody on the outside. That's just, I believe in our.
How am I on the outside? I just finished 15 years.
Okay.
All right.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Okay.
Children.
Okay. I wasn't gonna stay. I came here to hear the chief. I heard about the school. I don't really give a shit. But what I'd like to know. No, but the controversy, this is important, what's happening here. What I would like to know though is, my nephew went to the school on Ocean Park and Fifth. And then it had to be closed down because of all the reasons it was closed down. It was a new school. What happened? So I think what you're talking about, I am interested in that during the building of it, that things are not being addressed properly. So limited use. So how, tell me what happened.
Sure. So I mean, this is obviously before my time. I mean, it was built in late 90s or mid 90s, so 25, 30 years ago. And I understand that there were some design issues with it. In other words, I think some of the waterproofing elements were either designed incorrectly or installed incorrectly. I know there were some things installed incorrectly. I don't want to get into a lot of detail because it will bore the hell out of you, but they lapped the, okay, well then I'll talk. I won't get into too much detail, but they lapped some of the waterproofing. Okay.
And I respect you. And I don't know where I'm gonna vote right
Sure.
now based on what I've heard tonight. So I'm just trying to get a little bit more data.
So it's sure. So it's a building that had defects, whether they were design or construction, it's kind of irrelevant at this point. But they allowed water to get into the structure of this building for years or decades. And it got to the point where that the damage that came from that not all of a sudden, gradually was becoming more and more apparent. And the district would go and they would try to fix a leak that they were able to identify. And then and it turned out this was a systematic problem throughout the entire campus. So once we realized, I guess, the depth of it, that is when the district closed the campus. And the construction we're doing now is it's almost like a belt and suspenders waterproofing system that they're putting in there. So there's a liquid applied waterproofing plus the normal building construction on top of that. So really, we shouldn't have it going forward, but it was clearly an issue.
I think what you're addressing, sorry.
Nikki.
Okay, what you're addressing though is that there's still current issues going on. So you're questioning the quality of the service, quality of the engineering, quality of the people that are hired in order to go forward with these projects.
Yeah, I mean, we have a general track record of new stuff not working more often than not. They're flawed. I think it's also.
To say that more often than not, things don't work. No, of course not. Because if you think about the number of things that were built and everything within them, there are things that have failed. I'm not denying that. We have had, to Nikki's point,
Air conditioning.
it is a big deal,
Systemic.
but it wouldn't say more often than not. I don't think anyone would feasibly say that. So there are, of course, some issues.
Let's keep this productive.
I think the faucets are working now. I mean, again, now we're out of the thing. I focus on the building and construction. I don't really have anything to do with maintenance, so I can't get into detail about that. But the air conditioning is something that we're still dealing with. on the Discovery Building, and then the Innovation Building entirely separately had a failure. Replaced the chillers there. It's working fine now, but the air conditioning's been a problem. And I mean, Nikki and I've talked about this. Nobody's denying that that's a problem.
I think some of the crux of the question, and this is something I've heard a lot of feedback from the community over the past couple of years with Muir specifically, is like what are the repercussions, or, why aren't heads rolling when something like that happens? And how can the community be assured that in the future it will be handled differently if and when there are problems? So that's what I was trying to encapsulate that into an action item question. And I don't know if that's.
Sure. I mean, for one thing, these defects occurred 26 years ago. Nobody who was here then is here now. No heads to roll. I mean, you can fire me. I didn't have anything to do with it. And also, I don't think I should be fired for that. But there are maintenance issues. And so what the district has done is tried to improve the training that the maintenance guys are getting. And we're also, I think we need to still hire some maintenance positions. And I'm not talking about for things like painting and waterproofing. Air conditioning techs is one where we've added, in, I guess it would have been 8 years ago. I don't think we had maybe 15% of our classrooms were air conditioned. Now, all of our classroom buildings are air conditioned with one exception, which is the Lincoln 500s building. So that we added over 600 air conditioning units. Well, we need a lot of air conditioning techs for that. And that is something I think the district is still working on, and they're budgeting on the, as far as adding on the general fund side. And then of course they have to be trained up to deal with new systems, and it's not the old thermostat driven systems anymore either.
Like, who decides, for example, at Lincoln, when you guys did just the refresh or I can't remember I think refresh is the word you use. Yeah, but really it was a fresh coat of paint. It had there's water damage on the walls and
Are you talking about
the auditorium, sorry.
So that wasn't
there's water damage and it's in the exact same place as before. Like, who decides to let those leaks keep going? My cynical view is somebody was hoping to tear it down. And we've been told that things come off the list for maintenance when they think they might tear it down. But then what we end up with is a bunch of buildings in SMMUSD that literally rot until they are taken down to build a new one. And that's sort of like their endless cycle instead of repairing like other districts do. So why didn't we fix the water damage?
I hear the question, and I hate giving an answer like this, but I am only involved with bond program, with the facilities bond program. That was a maintenance project. So I actually don't have any details on the decisions that were made at Lincoln Auditorium. To your other point about removing things from maintenance because we're going to replace it with a bond, it's generally not that exactly, but it's things like, for example, I just told you there's one building left in this district one classroom building left in this district that doesn't have air conditioning. It's the Lincoln 500s. It's because we knew we were going to go in there and modernize it in a significant way. So rather than put in air conditioning that would be there for 2 years, and then we would tear it out and do all this work and put in new air conditioning, we waited on that. So that does happen. We do make that decision to try to be better stewards of public money. We could have easily air conditioned that building. It just wouldn't have been a good idea.
This is the last question, because we do have other things we have to move on to.
Question for you, sir, because you're fairly expert in this, getting bonds and buildings. So have you all benchmarked, so you did some work, it sounded like benchmarking. So for instance, how much it should cost maybe per square foot or per building. So have you all done that? If you professionally how do you see Santa Monica's building program benchmarking against others in terms of efficient use of funds?
It's more expensive to build in Santa Monica and Malibu, honestly. There's a couple of reasons for that. Most of our builders, as you would imagine, do not come from here. We have a project labor agreement, which requires union labor on our bigger projects. And the contractors, the laborers, I'm sorry, or carpenters or any of the trades, most of them live well east of here. We get some from Palmdale, some every once in a while come down from Ventura, more in Malibu than here in Santa Monica. A lot of them are coming from San Bernardino in that area. So there is a cost that the contractors, as they bid this work, are building into that because their guys are still getting on the road at 5 o'clock in the morning to get here on time. And then they're sitting around in the trucks for an hour and a half because you can't start working until 8 o'clock. So and that's a part of the cost, I think. But we do see a higher cost in Santa Monica than in other areas. In Long Beach, it's a little less expensive, certainly in LA and anything east of there it is. As far as the benchmark, we probably see about, depending on the construction type, we see about $1,000 a square foot and sometimes up to $1,100 a square foot for most of our projects. I mean, obviously it's a very general number, but what's that? That's within Santa Monica.
1,200 here versus.
Maybe 900 if you're in Long Beach or something. I mean, I don't know.
We're choosing more expensive designs like the gym versus Manhattan Beach. It's
Well,
also like that's
It is
a
a,
layer.
it
we're
is an
at. How
entirely
much would
different
it
project.
cost? I would love to know, and I'm sure everybody here, all those projects that you all have shown us, if we finished all the schools, how much, and if we finished them at today's construction cost, how much would all the rest of the phases at all the schools cost?
Oh, I wouldn't be able to guess that. I'd be
Shouldn't-
guessing if I told you.
We
that.
know that.
It's not something I know off the top of my head, Nikki.
All right. Thank you both.
Thank you.
I know there's some passionate disagreement on this issue, 500 million, big number, and thank you both for taking time to inform the community on this. Appreciate it. We need to move on to board business. There's no time for discussion right now. If you want to try and have a discussion with someone that's leaving, please do it outside, and not in the immediate hallway because it echoes. All right, everyone. It's after 8 o'clock, so I'm sorry, there's no time for discussion in the room. I hope we don't lose the entire room. Thank you. Let's move into board business. We've only got about 30 minutes. So time is tight because we gave a lot of time to this as was warranted. Want to kick off with executive team. OPA elections coming up. Speaking of elections, as the year winds down, I think you all know, we have a new board for January every year. I'll defer to Patty if there's anything specific we need to talk about with respect to the election, but the two things I want to flag are the types of people that are showing up here for our meetings or that are watching on Zoom. Sorry, please take discussions well outside. Are the types of people that we'd love to have on the board and help bring speakers like this and help everything we're doing with community. So come speak with me if at any time if you're interested in learning more about being on the board. Patty, anything with respect to the election specifically we want to talk about?
Some of us are great. Meeting for vote. You have to be a member of OPA, and you have to be on the board. You have to really care about coming to the meetings and contributing to what we're trying to do on a yearly, monthly, weekly basis. So we can take your information to me or to Christina or to Sean, and to know that you have until I think the first week in November, we don't have the exact date yet, to submit that you would like to do that, and then we'll hold the election in December. So,
cool. Thank you. Any questions or thoughts or things we need to talk about with respect to the election? You're going to hear a lot more about the OPA election.
Going to be in Washington Elementary on the Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and we hope to see you all one of those days.
Lucy, you had your hand up? Board seats are 2 years. So, yeah, give or take. Dave, you had your hand up? Just echoing Hattie. Please vote, both in OPA and in the other election. Cool. I think that's it for the election. Communications, I think we can just skip any of the details, all things going smoothly with newsletter and other outreach right now. If someone has a question, I'm happy to jump in on it. Member engagement, and events. So, upcoming events, on November 2nd is the Main Street Halloween event. The Halloween dog costume trick or treating along Main Street. I think that's on the 2nd, even though Halloween's on the 31st, right? Yeah. And one of the things that is open for discussion that we're gonna need to discuss and vote on is whether there's a movie this year. So the past 3 years, we've done a movie in the street because the Halloween event was a full street closure. This year, we're not doing a full street closure. We can have access to the Ashland Hill parking lot that night and host the movie in that parking lot, but Main Street needs contribution to help fund that. They don't have the funds available for that. The total movie event is about $800. They need us to contribute up to half of it, or ideally about half of it. I've actually reached out to a sponsor as well, potentially a realtor, about potentially picking up that on our behalf, or for everybody. But open discussion of if OPA wants to sponsor that, because if not, and that sponsor falls through, then probably won't have the movie this Halloween. Thoughts?
So that figure towards it.
What night will this be?
November 2nd, Saturday, November 2nd, or Sunday, whatever November 2nd is. Before that, any questions or thoughts on movie on November 2nd, whichever day of the week that is? So the cost of the movie is 800. They're asking for us to pick up at least half of it, unless we get a sponsor that jumps in. Right, we'll figure that out. Lucy, you had a question or a motion? Yeah, it's, I think last year was Beetlejuice, or maybe that was 2 years ago. I think last year was Hokey Put, no. But I don't know. It's yeah. It gets 100+ people. It's a good community event that I think parents and kids get pretty excited about. There we go.
Well, second.
What's the motion? Is the motion to contribute up to $400 for the Halloween movie? Thank you. John already beat you to the second. Any questions before we vote on it? Cool. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Great. I'm thinking, we already took some early votes on it. It's probably gonna be Beetlejuice or Beetlejuice 2 if it's available. Cool. Anything else about the Halloween event we need to talk about? Let's shift into the holiday party. I know we talked about this last month, but December 8th is the Main Street holiday party and tree lighting. We were trying to figure out if we can do ours on the same day, because I know the Conservancy also has a holiday party that day. I believe the consensus was we can try and time it so it's right after the Conservancy one, but I don't have a definitive follow-up on that, but we want for the Conservancy party.
You decided to come to the time that you want to start like at 4, and they'll know that, because people don't stay the whole time.
Yeah.
You also do the election then, so.
Yeah.
Do we need a motion to do that?
Well, I think we need to figure out, is there another date that would work, or do we lock in on that date and just collaborate with? Yeah. Yeah.
You can start whenever you want.
Yeah. Yeah. Do we? Cool. I think we're in agreement on the 8th. Do we need a motion for this? I don't know. I guess we do, because we're saying that's when the elections are going to be, right? So, gee.
If we do it on the 8th at 4.
Great. December 8th for holiday party and elections. Lucy second. Any other questions on that?
Say that
building sounds like it's been full.
Yeah, 4-ish. Collaborating with the Conservancy. Cool. Any other questions or concerns on that? Did you have? We have to reach, we're gonna reach out to the Victorian. Hopefully they'll host us again. They usually are pretty generous with us. And that's a different crowd. The Victorian is different places at different times of the day. I'm not too worried. Good callback, though. All right, we have a second. Any other questions or concerns? All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Cool, passes unanimously. Yep. Yeah, we'll follow up on sort of how that impacts our election timing. Thank you. Cool. Anything else on Main Street, Robbie, Judy, anything else we need to be talking about with respect to Main Street or events?
I just that there are going to be events on Main Street over the next few months. Even though we can't close the street very often, like twice in a year, but there's still be nice events, and Sean and I and John are, and Ian, there's a bunch of us involved in helping to figure out the relationship between Main Street and OPA.
Cool. Anything else on that? All right, jumping into task forces.
Thank Christina and Dave for putting together a terrific beach cleanup this past weekend. Yeah. You know, on September, the next 2
Sean too.
Sean.
I wasn't there.
You put
Put it in the news.
I understand, but that's, thank you. Thank you.
And it was a nice full day.
Good.
And I heard that it's doing this 3 times a year for next year.
Thank you all. Let's jump over to Abe, talk about emergency management.
Yes, well, we had our first committee meeting in a few years, a couple of weeks ago on a Thursday. And I submitted the purpose of the committee to you, and Sean will be emailing that statement to all the board members for approval. And then I'm planning to have the next meeting. Several topics were discussed during that first meeting, and then we'll have another meeting as to how we're going to implement that during the next year.
Great. Education, I don't know, there's more to talk about, Christina or John, other than we spent a lot of time on that today already, so. Anything?
We will not have access to this.
Thank you.
Or I would like to think about having OPA officially support mental health. I know there was a bunch of negativity in the room today, as we heard from Nikki Koloff. I think most of us in the community think funding our schools is good.
I'm not even sure if we're allowed to take a position on anything on the ballot. Yeah.
Oh,
As a 501c3, we are not, I believe we're not allowed to weigh in on anything on the ballot.
I thought.
I could, please correct me if I'm wrong, but that.
And talk to people about it, but I don't know if we should have a.
Where there's doubt, it's just not.
Yeah. Cool. I've got your item down on the list. So is there anything else from committees? I don't, housing or Lincoln Boulevard to talk about this? John, sorry, John, then Dave, you guys, Dave, then John.
Starting Amazon working their way on it. Looks like every corner there's something.
Not sure if that's the lighting or. I won't even go down the control. I think by the next meeting, try to bottom if that is in fact the actual lighting upgrade be initiated.
They sound like doing that.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, yeah, I hope that actually.
Right. Anything else or any action items we need to talk about for Lincoln? Cool. John?
No, I was just gonna bring up the construction that started. You know, they can confirm if they can get a more detailed plan, because they seem kind of open-ended when they were here last time. I will say that, we were told, that the bowling alley is gonna come down because it's started to become kind of a problem for the neighborhood, right? So the developer's aware and he's gonna try to find that.
Yeah, I haven't heard any substantive updates on the bowling alley property progress or Gelson's in months, so I'm not sure timing on any of that.
I thought it was already, the mixed use project was already green.
For the bowling alley? Yeah, but you know, we have to have finance, right? The interest rates are high.
Yeah.
So while everything's there, they've just been holding off. Well, you know, we're not sure what is financing at the USAA. I don't think you guys care, but so what's starting to happen is people are starting to put holes in the chain link fence. So yeah, so people started to put holes in the chain link fence or pull back the plywood, right, find a place to live. So those of us who live around there have noticed, we talked to the developer, and that's when he said, even if he doesn't have the financing, that's cheap.
Right.
No, you can back out.
Cool. All right, anything else from task forces or committees that I missed? Good. Outstanding items. So November meeting, it's currently scheduled on Veterans Day, which is the 11th of November. Library is closed that day. So we have two options. We hold the meeting elsewhere, or we do it on another day.
No one has another idea. That might work, I can put it in the, I can put a request.
I have no opinion on this. I'm good whenever, so. Do I have them? Is there a motion to move next month's meeting to a Wednesday? Lucy, what is your motion, Lucy? Second, Dave, all in favor? Any opposed? All right, let's have a backup discussion in case Wednesday's not an option for whatever reason. Do we move it to the following, do we move it to Monday, the 18th as the backup? Any thoughts on that? I know it puts it tight with the December holiday party, but we're not having a meeting in December, so I think that's a good backup. That's my personal opinion. But if someone has a better idea, I'm open to it.
I'll ask those things, and I think that we have used it on Wednesday before. And if A wants to use these on the Wednesday, we could also do that. I can put in a request, we
Sure.
can put in 2 requests.
All right, so does anybody have a strong opinions on whether it should be moved to Wednesday or the following Monday? I don't.
So it's on.
Let's take a straw poll. Who thinks it should be the following Monday, like a week later, the 18th? One.
I have a
Okay,
commission meeting to go to that night.
gotcha. And then how many people thinks it should be 2 days later on Wednesday, the 13th instead? Lovely, it's split. Let's start with Wednesday, see if it's available, and then push to Monday if needed. Cool. At the moment, Jenny Rogers, who's the director of Recreation and Arts Department, is going to be our guest that month, although we'll see if she's available on the alternate date. And nobody else has lined up yet. Hopefully the world isn't burning down. Sorry, bad joke. That's all I had on formal business other than approving the minutes, but I wanted to see if there's any open items before we get to that. We're doing that next month. That it's supposed to be in November. Today was a busy day, in case you didn't notice.
Table.
Cool. I hope everyone had a chance to look at the September minutes from Christina. Is there a motion to accept them, or unless there's any questions on them? Will motions, Lucy beat you to the second, all in favor, any opposed? Motion accepted. Open floor. Yes.
I'm in the coalition building and at different city events, I've tried to talk to the other, since there are other, associations, neighborhood associations. And in a couple instances, OPA just got frozen out, and then I read, what was the event? It was some event that was important, like voting or something.
The candidate forum.
Candidate forum, okay. And that's important, and then I thought, everyone's invited but us, what's that about? Okay, maybe that's how it's been, but how can we work around that?
So we have not, one sec, we have not stepped back from the neighborhood coalition organization. We're still participating in that. The candidates forum, I don't have a good way to phrase it. It was a hot mess from the planning, and there was one person in particular that decided we are not. Yeah, to kick us out, and everyone else was scared to stand up that person, and so we just. We were at first, and then we were kicked out because one person took issue with us for reasons that are still unknown to any of us. I'm happy to talk about it one-on-one.
Remember that we're fundamentally different than, the neighborhood organization, and that we try to be as neutral as possible on everything that we do. We don't really, it was unusual to have somebody like Ricky Cole up here today, who's really just very, very biased. But we try to be really neutral, and the other neighborhood organizations are not. So we run into that a lot of times, right? When we recommend that the questions be open, and that's.
So just to clarify, I don't think it was weird that she was here. I think we had someone pro and someone against. They're both biased on their opinion, and that's why, hold on, and that's why we did that. Let's just move on from this. We had people that were focused on the pro and the con, and I thought it was a good discussion as a result. Yeah.
All the different opinions, and everyone has the right to present something that we don't want to hear or listen to. If they make a good case, she made an incredible case, and you can go further and examine it, and maybe she has, we all have our biases, but we can't shut that down, and there is a lot of that. Please let it not be us perpetuating it.
Agreed. And with the candidates forum, we got kicked out because some neighborhood groups aren't run that way. And so.
That's to the detriment.
Yeah, John.
Well, I just want to add that I've been involved for 20 years, not as long as this chief. And not that. And there are a subset of people in this town who viciously attack and dox other people. There's a small one. She's one of them.
Okay, I don't know.
Right? I do.
Yeah, I do too.
He's merging people at this meeting.
Okay, well,
I don't think you don't like some.
then model other.
All right.
But you're right about that, but the way to deal with it.
Let's model better behavior.
Yep. And we're trying to do that. Cool. Yes, so is there a motion to adjourn the meeting? Abe got the motion in, Patty got the second, all in favor. Motion adjourned at 8:25 p.m. Thank you, everyone.
How's it good?
If people have 2 minutes, we got to just put some tables down.
Yeah, we got one of that.
I took a picture. Let me give you here's the picture. We have to be down here to either, that's why, so. Yeah, that's the here's how it has to look.
Yeah. Are you're not members of?
No, we live here, we just moved in.
Oh, well, then maybe.
Yeah.
You get the newsletter already?
No, actually, we literally just moved in.
Oh, wow. How do you discover the meetings?
Kelly, our neighbor, we're trying to set up like a neighborhood watch things.
Good.
Live on her street.
Do me a favor, you can text me and I can follow up later.
Okay, great.
You would like to get on your letter, goes out twice a week and it. 310.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you so very much. Yes, thank you. Appreciate it.